Hello everyone and welcome back to One Autistic Person. This is the 7th video in my potentially 50 video series that takes a delve into the Autism Quotient questionnaire, looking at each question individually, and rather than, so as part of the diagnosis process, we have to look at these things as deficit, and what I want to do with this is kind of flip that narrative and have a positive thought process of it, and what these deficits, how could they benefit us. But if there are situations where there's not a possibility of us finding a benefit as such from it, how do we mitigate it, and how do we make that easier for us? So this one is going to be a challenging one because it is a big question, and for me is sort of a major problem for me personally. And I don't think it's because. So I will go into the actual question, which, as I say, is the 7th question on the Autism Quotient questionnaire, which is: other people frequently tell me that what I've said is impolite, even though I think it is polite. Now, first things first with this, I didn't know this was the case. I had been told by certain people who were close to me that sometimes I was being a little bit abrupt or wasn't necessarily taking people's feelings into consideration. But I thought that was just because that they were people that I knew. So maybe I used to think, prior to really looking at whether I was autistic or not, that was me thinking maybe I just did that with the people close to me. So when I was going through the diagnosis process and I found that this was going to be one of the questions on this, I specifically asked people outside of that very small circle of people that I know. And most people said, yeah, you can be quite insensitive. It can come across as you're being quite abrupt or brutal with your response to things, and I was quite shocked by that because people had never really said this to me. So the thing with this question is I think it's an important one to sort of research with other people around you before sort of answering it. If they tell you that no, you're always polite, there's no problem, then great, that's fantastic. If they do, then that you can answer the question, because I think at saying people frequently tell me implies that people might say things more to you. And also I think because I have such a small social group, so I have the person I live with, I have my best friend, and I have my mum, and pretty much anybody else is peripheral to that and is not somebody really I have a lot of communication with, so they're not going to be able to give those answers. Or they're not going to tell me it. Sorry, they will give me the answers, but they're not going to be telling me on a day-to-day basis or when I do it. So people at work are not going to necessarily tell me I've been rude or impolite, or that I've not necessarily taken their feelings into consideration, or if that's how it appears to them. Whereas I just see it as being honest and upfront, and I am telling people as I see it. So it's not necessarily, I mean, nobody said, oh, you're actually absolutely terrible. It's just that it was sometimes I wasn't taking people's feelings into consideration. Whereas it is a matter of not taking them into consideration because I didn't think it would bother them to hear what I'm going to say. And especially if I'm there in the capacity of somebody's line manager, I just automatically assume that, we can have that open and honest conversation, and I expect the open and honest conversation back. And I think the thing is quite often I think that they've been open and honest with me, and actually I have with them, but they actually haven't with me. And I have found that since being diagnosed, or even before that, sort of having this conversation around the fact that because I spoke to my team before I was diagnosed, saying that I think this is where it will end up being. I am very privileged in this because I don't know whether most people could do it. I don't think most people could. But quite a lot of people then started to understand the fact, one, that I was basically just telling them this in a way that I thought was the correct way, but also was giving them permission to be able to say back to me in a really direct way. And I think that's a better word than the other words that are used, things like brutal and impolite. I think it's direct. I think it's directly saying what you think, and not beating around the bush with things, and not going, this is, I'm just going to pretend that I need to speak for half an hour about something I could say in 5 minutes, and then we can discuss what we're going to do afterwards. And some people have appreciated that within work, and I've actually had much better relationships with people since then, because they've been able to be honest with me, and I've been able to be honest with them. And if either of us sort of say something out of turn, the other person can say actually, that felt a little bit like you were attacking me, and it's then straight away an explanation of it rather than holding on to it. And I think that is, again, with this one, it's similar to others that I've said about within this, and especially in a work environment, it's having that open and honest conversation with as many people as you feel comfortable with. If you feel comfortable with the people you directly work with, having that open conversation to say, if I say anything that's directly to you that feels impolite, I don't mean to, and I'm actually pre-apologising for the fact that has upset you, but please tell me, and we can discuss it, and we can have that conversation. But also you understand the fact you can do the same with me, because I am open to having that feedback and having those conversations. I don't like it. I'm not saying it's like something I sit and go, oh, that's great, and I overthink it massively afterwards. But because that conversation's already been had, I then take it as verbatim that we've already had that conversation, that we've said we can be open and honest with each other, that we're just being direct. And actually, if I do have an actual problem, I will also tell you this is a bigger problem, rather than it just being, I just need you to understand this from my perspective, or this is what I was thinking, and you haven't really taken that into consideration. So I will overthink it regardless, because I overthink everything, but it is way more likely that I'm going to take it positively. And I think other people are the same. I think people who are not autistic are the same. Having those boundaries in place to have these conversations, I think it is a really good thing. I think people then, even with the boundaries, quite often don't do it. Whereas I'll put those boundaries in place, and then we are actually going to live within those boundaries. I'm very much about, let's set our own boundaries with each relationship I have, whether it's at work, friendship, people, anybody I've been in a relationship with, that type of thing. Boundaries are set. If boundaries are set, then I can live within those boundaries, but I expect everybody to live within those boundaries. Otherwise, I lose trust very quickly. So anyway, that's quite a massive tangent on this one. But again, like some of the others that I've done with these, the more you start sort of thinking about them, the more you start realising what they mean, and what the more complex nature to these questions. So my answer here is definitely agree that other people frequently tell me that what I've said is impolite, even if I think it is polite. I think I'm being direct. I've not been told it until I asked. So like I say, I think it's a really good thing for you to maybe ask that question, be prepared for the response, and tell people that they can be absolutely honest. So basically say, I want you to be direct with me. I won't see it as impolite. I won't see it as rude. I won't see it as, I will take it as feedback, but I'd love to know whether I do come across as impolite to you, and the thing with it is the bit that, even though I think I think it is polite, was very clear for me because of the fact that I was totally unaware of the fact that people felt I was being impolite. That was also really clear that I had thought that it was polite, because otherwise I would have known that I'd purposely being impolite. Or I was aware of the fact that I was impolite and then could do something about it. I need to be made aware of the fact that I've been to that person impolite, because some people won't see it, other people will. I'm not going to pick up on it. I've spoken the way that I feel is right in that moment. So interesting one. Again, this one is one where I do think you need to probably, unless you do get told it quite a lot from people around you, I think you're probably going to need to research and investigate from the people around you more to be able to get a true answer to this. So maybe a rewording of this one is, I am frequently perceived as being impolite, even though I think I am being polite. Then it's sort of like opening you up to answer those questions. So, I hope you've enjoyed this one. Like always, if you could like, comment, subscribe, share, that would be great. But commenting is the most important thing for me on these videos. I'd love to see people having an open and honest conversation about these questions, how they perceive them, what their context is to them, and how they would answer them. I think that autism being the spectrum that it is means that we can have so many different opinions and different ways of perceiving things, and I'd love to hear the way that people feel about this, because we're all so different. Anyway, thank you very much, and I hope to see you on the next video. Thank you. Bye.